Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 346 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a very special guest this week. Please welcome back to the show, the wonderful Jeremy Franklin. How's it going, Jeremy?
Thank you. Poop stump in the building.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I just triple checked that I'm still recording. So
yeah,
okay.
I'm glad to hear it. We have you on, Jeremy, because we are going to be talking all about Nintendo this week, as we are one to do on a Nintendo podcast.
That is what y'all do here.
Specifically about Boost Mode. That is a new mode that has been added to the Switch 2 in handheld mode that allows Switch 1 games to be played back in docked mode, basically, on the Switch 2 in handheld. This is a feature we've been asking for on this podcast specifically since before the Switch 2 even came out. We did a whole episode talking about how we want this to be a thing, and now it's finally happened, and this has us asking, is Nintendo finally listening to its fans? So we're going to be talking all about that in our main topic here today, just about the changes that we've been seeing in the Furukawa era of Nintendo, what we might see in the future, and whether or not Nintendo actually are listening to their fans and taking their considerations into heart. We also have lots of news and rumors that we're going to be getting through before we get to the main topic, including updates on the Super Mario Galaxy movie and Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie. GTA 6 is rumored to be coming to Switch 2. Big grain of salt on that one, but we'll be breaking it down. Game Chat's free trial period is ending at the end of this month, and much, much more. But before we get into all that, how you doing, Jeremy? How was this past week?
Doing good. We've spent a lot of time together over the past week, so yeah. I think it's just been a long one, so running on fumes a little bit here, but man, if it wasn't a lot of fun. So
yeah, seriously, yeah. Our friend Leslie and Nate, the two of them, both of our friends, they got married to each other. We are all scrimps together. We're the scrimp gang. So that was really nice to go to a wedding with you, and then also yesterday we saw Project Hail Mary together at the IMAX theater.
Most of it.
Yeah, I think you might have been nodding off a little bit at one point. I was on tap Jeremy on the shoulder and wake him up during important scenes duty, which
I got like 98% of it.
I think it was probably closer to 80, 85. But yeah, you got a good amount
of the
movie.
Don't let that dissuade your interest in the movie. I did enjoy what I saw.
Oh yeah, and it's a really great movie in IMAX as well. It takes up that full use of the IMAX screen.
It looked incredible.
Yeah, great stuff. Ryan Gosling, Gozpaws himself, is charming as always. Excellent actor. And congratulations to Leslie and Nate. Long-time listeners of the show will remember that Nate was back on like episode like maybe 70 or something like that. Maybe even earlier than that, talking about Smash likes. This was back before we even did the podcast in its video form. So go check that out. Give that a listen. Send it to him in a DM. He'll be very confused and say congratulations because now he is married. But that's been our weekends. I haven't been doing too much else. I've been reading books. So I think we should probably get into a little bit of shout outs here before we get into the news section. Over on Discord, we had some great responses to last week's episode that we did with Deeb, which was all about Android handhelds and the AYN Thor. Medium Quality on our Discord said, it's interesting to think about Valve putting its weight behind gaming on ARM-based devices. I don't think they'll move to ARM for Steam Deck 2, but it's certainly possible. I am kind of 50-50, honestly, on if the Steam Deck 2 is going to be another x86 console or if it's going to be ARM-based. I think, PC emulation on Android is way farther ahead than I thought it was going to be. So that would be interesting to see. Medium Quality also says the one big piece of advice I would give to anyone picking up the AYN Thor or getting into handheld emulation of any kind is not to try to do everything. Set up one emulator and start playing games. Otherwise, you'll end up spending your first week tinkering instead of playing. I kind of agree with that, but also I did not do that and then just tinkered for the whole first week and I still had a great time. So your mileage may vary.
I think a lot of people really get the most fun out of that part of it too, to be honest.
Yeah. It's like if you liked the tinkering aspect of the Steam Deck, then like Android handhelds, you're going to like even more because it's a lot of doing setups and whatnot. But
the ARM chips, those are the mobile chips, right? Those are like all
that's right.
The Android.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we're seeing crazy progression with ARM technology.
That would be interesting if they go that way instead for Steam Deck 2 for sure.
Well, the Steam Frame, the headset, is running on ARM.
That is going to be ARM?
Yeah. And that's playing games natively. So that's like a bit of a hint.
It's supposed to be pretty strong.
Yeah, exactly.
Natively. Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that goes. But over on YouTube, Seegerlion8608 says, I've had the Odin 2 Portal for a year and the honeymoon period isn't over yet. I doubt there is one because I pick it up almost every day to play games. So that's really good to hear. That's kind of the same chipset as the AYN Thor. And in response to us talking about the AI developments from NVIDIA and DLSS 5, Lucanos34 says, I'm increasingly convinced the long-term strategy is to make traditional hardware and game development so expensive that it becomes unsustainable. That would push studios toward AI-generated content and funnel players into subscription-based game streaming platforms as the primary way to access games. That's kind of a dark future being discussed there, but it also wouldn't surprise me. I feel like,
sense.
We've been moving away from like quickly physical games to digital games, and then digital games to streaming games. Then what's after streaming games, right? You know, that kind of makes sense. Follows a bit of a pattern. So hold on to your discs if you can, because who knows how long we'll have them. But anyway, thanks everybody for all the shout outs. We also had lots of great interactions and comments on our TikTok and our Instagram shorts as well. So definitely go over to all our social media pages. If you'd like to be shouted out next week, drop us a line on one of those or write down in the YouTube comments of this video version of the episode that we put up on YouTube. That's a great way to get in contact with us. We'll be sure to shout you out next week on the show. And while you're over there on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth goes a really long way. But I think with all that out of the way, I'm ready to get into the news. How you feeling, Jeremy? You ready for the news?
Yeah, I'm ready for the news.
Let's freaking do the news, baby, because we got a lot to get through. We're going to start with some movie news, as we said up top. The first being from the Super Mario Galaxy movie. This is fast approaching. I think in just over a week, this movie will be releasing. I'm pretty excited. And to celebrate, I suppose, McDonald's has a collab that is happening with the Mario Galaxy movie. I think starting on 3/26, that is just a few days from the day we're recording here, children and adult children can order kids' meals with Super Mario Galaxy themed toys. So that's exciting if you want to go do that. I know last time there was a big collab like this that everybody got really excited about. It was the Pokemon collab with the Pikachu boxes and those,
not gonna lie,
they had cards and stuff in them, right? Yep. Yeah. Are you going to be picking up some Happy Meals for this?
I might pick up one little cheeky Happy Meal, but it doesn't really pique my interest like the Pokemon one did.
Right.
Good for them for the collab.
Yeah, I think if they bring teeny Beanie Babies back, I might go back.
That would get you in. That would get you back. The big arch wasn't enough for you?
No, the big arch draws me in every day, but I'm able to be like, get behind me, Satan. But I think, bringing back the commemorative Princess Diana Beanie Baby bear, I think
I'd really do it.
I don't know. When's the next anniversary of her death? We got to figure that out. Anyway, that's
next podcast. Princess Diana.
So go get you some greasy burgers if you're trying to, beef up your Mario toy collection.
Do any of the specific toys look good?
I don't know. They seem fine. They're all these kind of like ring things, but they have these.
They come in a little box. They come in the little pound block.
Yeah. There's a block, and then they're kind of like display. They're almost more for like display. I think they know that like adults will be wanting to get these to like put on shelves and whatnot. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised that they're skewing a little older with these. But
they're probably cheaper than an amiibo, to be honest. So and you get the free burger that comes with it.
Yeah, then you just like buy one of those amiibo cards, tape it to the bottom, then you have a DIY amiibo. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Food for thought. But we'll move on to our next bit of movie news, and this involves the Sonic the Hedgehog movie 4, which I guess is officially just titled Sonic the Hedgehog 4. A little bit better than Nintendo's naming system for their movies. But the full cast has been revealed. And we knew already that Kristen Bell was going to be playing Amy in the Sonic movie 4. But added to the cast are Ben Kingsley and Nick Offerman. So that's kind of cool. We don't know exactly who they're going to be playing in the
Surely
movie.
Nick Offerman is Big the Cat. right? Surely he's Big the Cat.
You think so?
I think he's Big the Cat, man.
I'm Big the Cat. I like to fish.
That'd be so good, dude. Talking about Froggy and shit.
Ben Kingsley has such an interesting career because he's like a Shakespearean actor. Like the dude is like an incredible. He played Gandhi, for Christ's sake.
Oh wow!
You know I mean? But he also does like Marvel and he does
Schindler's
stuff like
List
Sonic and yeah. He's done tons of stuff, so it's really interesting to see. Clearly he does a one for me and one for them, or one for the second house, maybe. I'm not sure how much he's making off of these voice roles, but good for him. And I think the big news out of this is that Jim Carrey is confirmed to be returning for the fourth Sonic movie, which...
Thank God.
No, I mean, I guess cover your ears for the next 10 seconds if you haven't seen Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but
you've had some
Robotnik dies at the end of that thing. So
it was pretty much a send-off.
It very much felt like a send-off. So I think this is proof that Jim Carrey's also looking maybe to buy another house.
Open doors. Yeah.
But he is a big draw, and I can definitely see,
he's really, really incredible in those movies.
Yeah. I'm never totally sure exactly how I feel about him because it's like he's so clearly doing his 90s shtick again, and it's like
so good.
We're not in the 90s anymore, man. But I think it is nice to see that he's still around and acting, even though lots of people think he's a clone now. I don't know if you've been following that news.
In real life, not even just in Sonic. You're talking about in real life.
He did some award show and he just had a bunch of I think he had some filler put in
makeup or something.
He had some
Botox.
face, Botox work or something like that. So he looked a lot different, but all the conspiracy theorists online are like, Jim Carrey's been, killed and replaced with a clone.
Yeah.
So it'll be
anything's possible.
It'll be exciting to see Jim Carrey's clone be in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 alongside Kristen Bell. But we'll go ahead and move on from that, unless there's anything else you want to say.
When you see the cast all on us, it's really impressive, man. There's a lot of big names.
That's true.
Especially with Keanu and Idris Elba. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Ben Schwartz is obviously coming back. James
Ben
Marsden
Schwartz.
and Tika Sumpter are coming back.
I loved Idris as Knuckles. I thought he did really.
Yeah.
Really good.
Matt Berry is going to be in the cast.
I noticed that too. He wasn't already in it. He's in it.
No, he wasn't.
I can't think
right?
of who he was.
I'm seeing that right now in this Variety article. But see, I feel like Matt Berry would be he could be Big the Cat. Big. Yeah,
that's gotta be one of those two. Gotta be one of those two.
That's what I think. But maybe Nick Offerman will be playing the Chows. He'll be playing every Chow. I'm a Chow. I can't really do a Nick Offerman, but
anyway. That's pretty good though. I get the idea.
Yeah, all right, got it. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our next bit of news, and this is a big old rumor, so take this with a grain of salt. But there is an industry insider named Kiwi Talks who has mostly made his name interviewing, ex-Retro Studios employees. He gets lots of scoops, especially when it comes to things involving the Metroid series and whatnot. But he has multiple sources, as far as he says, at Rockstar. And one of them, he said he's going to meet with in India soon. And they're going to be talking about, yes, the idea that Grand Theft Auto 6 may be coming day and date to Nintendo Switch 2 along with the other platforms. Now, as I said, this is a major rumor, and there have been lots of technical, breakdowns of the footage we've seen from the game, asking whether or not it could even run on this kind of hardware. My gut has always been that is way too big of an ask. But I think everybody was really surprised by Resident Evil Requiem and a lot of the other ports that have coming out recently. And Grand Theft Auto 6 did get a major delay recently. And you have to ask yourself if that might be because they are also trying to launch on another platform. I already saw you shaking your head, Jeremy, but do you think that this is an impossibility?
I'll eat my shorts if this is true, man. I don't think there's any way. It's a lot of really hearsay. It sounds like I do believe that there is a team or at least one person at Rockstar that is actively investigating that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is just such a pipe dream at this point. And I don't think that there's any chance in hell that it launches day of.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they're just struggling just to get the damn game out the door at this point for the consoles that they had already, the two consoles they've announced it for. I mean, it's not even coming out to PC
on
launch, It's only the the PS and Xbox. Yeah, I struggle to see it happening. If they were to add something, I figured they'd add PC, but I would love to see it on Switch. You do make a good point, though. Resident Evil Requiem actually, supposedly, I haven't seen it myself, but it's people that I've heard talk about it say that it works really good.
Yeah.
Which if you would have asked me before that game came out, I would have probably been pretty skeptical as well.
Well, it's like we're finally now getting to the point in the Switch 2's life cycle, and we're still early yet, but it's like a lot of the big AAA publishers that have had these dev kits for a while. We're starting to see the fruits of their labor, especially in terms of how they utilize DLSS, right?
Yeah.
And I think DLSS is doing a lot of heavy lifting on the Switch 2 for Resident Evil Requiem, but it's doing an amazing job. Like, I was looking at a side-by-side of Requiem versus Requiem on the Switch 2 versus Requiem on the Series S. And it just blows it out of the water, because the Xbox Series S just doesn't have that DLSS capability, And so it's just like when you brute force something that you're running at like, 480p, maybe it's not that low, but it's, it really, really does wonders. So it'll be interesting to see what they are able to do with this. But again, huge grain of salt. We only really have Kiwi Talks to go off of on this. He's gotten a lot of stuff right in the past, but he is definitely I'll call him a Twitter chirper. He loves to talk quite a bit on the internet. So I think he's one of those engagement guys, but we'll keep our eye on that. I think if we hear anything about it, it would probably be in either May. That's what Kiwi Talks was saying. He would expect to hear something by, and if not, then maybe by a summer direct. But if we don't hear it by the summer, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. It would be huge if it did, though.
It would be a game changer, quite literally. Yeah. We'll go ahead and move on to our next bit of news, and this is a really interesting one. Nikkei, the Japanese publication, has recently reported that Nintendo is developing a new hardware revision for the Switch 2, and this specifically is for the European Union, and this will have a replaceable battery. So basically, either there will be some sort of compartment or it'll just be easier to take the battery out once you take the back shell off of the Switch. But either way, this is because of EU regulations, as we know.
Thank God someone's doing it.
I know. The only laws that ever come into effect in the world of tech are because of the European Union. They're the only people, like our politicians here in the United States are all either way too old to understand or simply don't give a shit about tech regulation like this. But this is huge. I think it's great. I mean, I would love if they were able to sneak in some other revisions that we would hope to see with this console. We've been talking a lot about the screen, and it has some ghosting issues that I would love to see resolved in some sort of quiet revision here. With the Switch 1, we got kind of the V2 Switch before the OLED came out that had better battery life and all that stuff, and those kind of just quietly went out onto store shelves. I do know that the article, it was machine translated, obviously, from Japanese, the one that I read, but it did say that, if pressure mounts in the US and in Japan, they would also see this revision also sold over there. That just makes me think that they have a ton of Switch 2s still in the factories right now, even before they make these for Europe. But what do you think about this new removable battery SKU for the Switch 2 coming out?
I think anything like this is pretty much always a win for consumers for sure, because I think like we were saying that the EU laws, I think, are what caused Apple to have to conform to the lighting cables. For
USB-C. Yeah.
And I mean, like, I didn't think that much about it beforehand, but it just makes it so much more convenient. It's just net positive for everybody. So anything that they can do, I think helps. I doubt at this point that they'll include anything else that would cost them more money to implement in a new model. But who knows? Like you said, they do have the revisions that they've done before in the past. So
yeah, and I can see it. There's a lot in the main topic that we will be talking about insofar as complaints that people have had with the Switch 2 and ways that Nintendo might be able to approach those complaints. But yeah, you're right, especially about the USB-C thing. I'm like, the world is a hellhole of violence and decay and global warming. But the one utopian thing about the world is that all of my devices use USB-C. It's a truly remarkable thing to travel with one cable and charge all my shit. And I really never thought I'd see the day where Apple would have to capitulate to that as well. Right?
Yeah, and that's why I was kind of surprised to hear you say too that they aren't doing it in US and Japan yet. But I guess, like you said, they must have some crazy stockpile that they need to burn through first, because they can't just be like, this is what everybody gets now, and then sit on a bunch of old Switch 2s that they
totally. I think it would probably it would make more sense for them to only have one that they're making. Like that's what they did with the Switch 1 V2. Whenever it came out, it was like eventually they just stopped selling that original version, but they had to sell through their stock that they had already. So I imagine it doesn't make sense to make two versions simultaneously. So we'll probably eventually get that. They're just not announcing anything like that at this time, because that would be unfair to all the people that have bought a ton of these. And speaking of Switch sales, I say we move right on, because our next bit of news is here from Matt Piscatella, and it's all about Nintendo Switch 2's sales and how it is far outselling the Switch 1 at this point. We are now 9 months in, as we said, into the Switch 2's life cycle, and right now the Switch 2 is outselling the original Switch by a margin of 45% right now, which is pretty huge. There are graphs that you can look at on this, and I think that it's leveling out a little bit. There was obviously like a huge boost right at the very beginning of the Switch 2, which I think makes a lot of sense coming off of the enormous success of the Switch 1. I think also just Nintendo made so many units of the Switch 2 at launch, an unprecedented amount. It was the highest selling and fastest selling console of all time at that point. But still, 9 months in, that has maintained, and they still are far ahead of where the Switch 1 was. Jeremy, what do you think about this? Do you think that, this forecast will continue? Do you think the trend will continue? Do you think it's going to even out at some point?
I think it kind of stays in line with where it's at now, but I don't know. Like, I don't really see it. I guess that this implies that if it keeps going like this, that by end of life, it would have sold, close to almost 50% more than Switch 1 too. That just is like a crazy.
Yeah, I just can't see that happening, right?
Yeah, that just sounds crazy to me. But I didn't I don't know that many people with Switch 2s outside of like the core Switch Headz group. I feel like, right? Like, Rob, a lot of people that I know still haven't taken the plunge yet. So I mean, there is room to grow still, right? There's a lot of people here that need to get one, and that I think are still considering it, and I wouldn't be surprised to do it. I wonder if a price hike would maybe mess that flow up a little bit, because I know that's something that's always kind of in the rumor news as well.
Right?
Are we going to bump?
And we'll talk a little bit more about a potential price hike in the main topic as well, because there's stuff to say about that. I think there's pros and cons to the outlook as far as a price hike is concerned. But you are right. It's like we're seeing a huge amount of sales in these charts, and I don't doubt it. I know in Japan, it's sold incredibly well. It is incredibly fast selling. But when I talk to people, it's like I know a lot of people that just don't have it or that are holding off. I just think that there will be a time when the levy breaks for most people. It's like X amount of must-have software.
Yeah, exactly. One or two big games more, and I think most people will.
I mean, Pocopia right now is like really...
That's a great point.
People are getting major FOMO, I'm seeing online. A lot of people are like, what the hell? And a lot of the Animal Crossing normies, that like got a Switch for Animal Crossing, they're like, what the fuck, man? Why throw us a bone? Like, you got to give the game over here. But it's like, that is by design. I think it was a very smart move of Nintendo to hold that one back. And I think one or two more casual games like that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back on getting normies to pick this system up. But we'll see how that goes. We're going to move on right now to a little bit about Game Chat. We'll have more to talk about Game Chat in just a second, but this is sort of a PSA that Game Chat is ending its free period at the end of this month. That is March 31st. So up until this point, Game Chat has been usable for everyone with a Switch 2, regardless of whether or not you have the Nintendo Switch Online subscription or not. But after the end of this month, you will need to have the online subscription in order to make use of the Game Chat functionality, and indeed the primary function, at least, of the C button. That's been kind of the big point of contention with a lot of people, is like, why would you put a button on the system that is locked behind a paywall? And they're kind of not wrong. I sort of understand where they're coming from. But that said, you can remap the C button. So if ever you wanted to put anything else on the C button, you can. You can use it as a function button or something like that in the system settings.
Yeah, I don't even, even with having the chat stuff, probably never ever going to use that again.
So. Really? I still like game chat. I try to get everybody to game chat.
I think it's fine, but it's just like I'm probably going to use Discord if I'm actually playing with people.
Yeah.
For the most part, that I know the convenience is nice, but so if you don't remap it and you hit that button,
and you don't have an NSO subscription,
does it just pull up like a NSO? Like, buy now.
I don't know.
Spend $10 to use this button.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I bet there's going to be a bunch of YouTube videos whenever that happens, and it's like some screen that's like, if you want to use this, you got to subscribe. They're gonna be like, Nintendo's greedy, and the cottage industry of fuck Nintendo YouTubers will all be salivating to get their videos out as quickly as possible. But
I was pretty impressed when we were first messing with the Switch 2s when we got them, and you and I hopped on the game chat or whatever and turned on the closed captions stuff, and it caught every single thing that we were saying.
It says fuck. It will type out fuck. It will
tell you fuck.
Yeah.
It will type fuck.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo product. So that was pretty cool.
I think that game chat, we'll talk about it here in just a second. They have been updating it in a lot of ways that we've actually been asking for in previous episodes. But for me, it really is like so much more convenient than Discord. Like having, Discord, on my phone, often picks up the sound from the TV, or if I have to have one headphone in and the other one from the speaker of whatever I'm listening to. You know what I mean? So it's just like having all the sound coming from one place, especially when I'm playing in handheld, is very convenient. But yeah, we'll talk more about that in just a second. Let's move on for right now to our next bit of news, and this involves GameCube NSO. As you may know, the new Pokemon GameCube game, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, has released on the GameCube Classics app on the Switch 2. And with that, the app itself has gotten an update, and users are reporting that a lot of things have been fixed here. So this news item here and our next news item are going to move us into the main topic. But it seems like big complaints that people have had about this app for a long time, specifically input delay and stick range, have both been fixed. So, or at least massively improved. I know a lot of people have really had issues with input delay with GameCube. You can really feel it in games like F-Zero GX that are like super, super fast paced. In that game as well, there is kind of there's like a hexagon thing that shows you like where the dead zones are and everything like that. Because that game was a very technical game, and people are showing it's like, just using the Switch in handheld mode, it does not properly emulate a GameCube stick. So it does seem like they have been updating some of that stuff. So that's really great to see. Additionally, it seems like a CRT shader has been updated that utilizes HDR as well. So I know Nintendo's been doling out very realistic looking CRT shaders into the Switch. So that's cool to see. You have anything to say about this? Have you been using GameCube NSO at all?
Not as much as I probably should be. I know there's a few things that I have been wanting to check out. I do think it's weird they put this game instead of that other Pokemon game that came out before, Colosseum, right?
Right. I think Gale of Darkness is like a sequel to Colosseum as well, which is weird.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they couldn't just put Colosseum on there, because I thought they had already said Colosseum was coming. But
they did. Yeah, it's also coming at some point.
So they should have just done both of those. But I don't think I've actually played Gale of Darkness, so this might be one that I do pick up and play a little bit.
Yeah. I like GameCube. I'm not playing it as much as I thought I would as well. But I will say F-Zero GX didn't feel super great with the input delay. So I'm really excited to fire that back up and see if it plays any better with these updates. But we're going to move into our last bit of news here. And this definitely is leading into our main topic, because a giant, big new system update has released for the Switch 2. And normally these things are nothing. Whenever a Switch system update comes out, it's usually just something behind the scenes that is making it harder for pirates to get into the system, usually is what it is. But this actually has a ton of features that have been brought in. There's a whole thing of patch notes that you can find online right now. But I think the biggest one here, speaking about game chat, one thing that we had a major problem with game chat before, you could not add people to game chats that were already in progress. You now can do that.
Oh, they did. That's pretty big.
Right. That is big. That was a very annoying part of game chat, and making everybody leave and starting a whole new chat and re-inviting everybody and then having to do all your shit over again. That was so annoying. So that's really good. You can also invite people to your game chat that have not set up game chat yet. Now you couldn't do that before. And so you had to like get in contact with them a different way to get them to set it up. There are more game chat things I'd love to see added. We had a whole episode where we talked about all the things we'd love to see come to game chat. So Nintendo, we know you're listening. Please listen to that episode again and do those other things. Lots of other stuff has been added as well. You can now save notes about your friends in the friends list, which is kind of weird, but it's like if you have, like, for instance, I have 2 guys that are named Andrew, I think. And so I can now like make a note under their name as to like which Andrew is which, you know, I think you could do up to like 20 characters or something like that. So you can like write little notes like the ugly Andrew and the handsome Andrew or whatever. So that's kind of cool. So another thing that was really annoying to me, especially as someone that puts my Switch into airplane mode quite a bit, wink, wink for different reasons. Now they've made it to where when you put your Switch into airplane mode, it remembers all the settings that you had before about like Bluetooth or whatever. So before it was like, if I put it into airplane mode, I would have to go into the system settings and re-enable Bluetooth every time in order to use a wireless controller. You know, so that was actually really obnoxious when I'm bringing it in and out of airplane mode quite a bit. Now it'll just remember whatever those settings were from the last time you set them up. So that's a little quality of life feature that's really good to see. And then obviously the last super big one that we will mainly be talking about in our main topic is all about the boost mode that has been added. And that is the ability to play Switch 1 games handheld on Switch 2 in their docked modes. We'll be talking about that in the main topic. So I'm going to hold our discussion on that for right now. But about any of these 3 that we talked about here, is there anything from this update that really caught your eye, Jeremy?
Well, the only one that I had really seen was the docked one, like you said, that we're going to talk about the main chat. So this was all kind of news to me. That's pretty impressive that they got some of this out there.
Yeah.
Definitely some needed stuff.
And a lot of this is stuff that people have been actively complaining about, which kind of led us to the big question that we're asking in this episode. And that is Nintendo finally listening to fans and taking fan feedback to heart? We're going to be answering that question, at least as we see it, right after this break in the main topic. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Jeremy in just a moment. And we are back here with Jeremy Franklin to talk all about our topic this week, which is Nintendo finally listening to its fans? I would posit that the answer is yes, and maybe has been yes for a while, to be honest. But I think especially in this modern age of Nintendo with Furukawa at the head of the company, we are seeing a marked uptick in Nintendo actually paying attention to the biggest complaints that Nintendo fans have about their system, about games in particular, about features that they want to see. And we're starting to see them actually implement a lot of this stuff. And I think we should probably, before we get into like our main discussion, let's talk about boost mode, right? Because I think, that to me, like has been my number 1 requested feature for the Switch 2 for this entire time. Like I said, we talked about it. I was just listening back to an old episode that we did. It was a month before the Switch 2 came out. And it was like things we still don't know about the Switch. And one of my biggest one was like, are these games going to play in 1080 in my backlog on handheld? Because I've got this nice screen that is a 1080 screen. It'd be great to make the most of it. And it wasn't there on launch. I was really disappointed about that. I think a lot of people were disappointed about that. Games, especially like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, play at like 360p. On a 1080p Switch 2 with the bigger screen and everything like that. Looked horrible, right? Had some sort of upscaling applied, but now you can actually play the docked version of these games in handheld mode, which is huge, right? And I think that, games like, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, they're not playing full 1080 because I don't think that those games played in 1080 when they were docked on the TVs to begin with back in the day, because, it was kind of a miracle that some of those games ran on the original Switch at all. But I will say, looking at side-by-sides between the original, handheld versions on the Switch 2 screen and the docked versions, it is a marked improvement on lots of games. I know I personally have been going back and playing Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This is kind of basically like a quiet upgrade for Tropical Freeze, after they just did the Donkey Kong Country Returns Switch 2 edition that dropped for free, right? So stuff like this, I think, is really, really great to see. Are you a handheld gamer at all, Jeremy? Have you been taking advantage of this feature yet?
I have not taken advantage of it yet, just because of just sheer busyness, to be honest, and a couple other big games that have come out recently that I've been playing. So most of my time has been on Pokopia when I have been on the Switch. But I what I will say is that I would not have even known this was a thing unless, I obviously read Reddit and stuff all the time.
Right.
I just happened to be reading one thread about this specific update, and it was like in the comments of it. Maybe I didn't open up the patch notes to read it all. Yeah. It was just it felt like it should have been a little more advertised to me, because it was like
at the bottom of their patch notes for the update that they did. It was like not talked about at all.
I was literally like, holy shit. I'm sitting there reading my phone. I almost didn't click on the article, which is why it made such a small little impact on me, right? Because I remember reading it and I'm like, holy shit, that seems like such a awesome thing. To be honest, I didn't realize it wasn't doing that already, but I mean, it just seems like it was, this makes sense.
I mean, I definitely did. And it's dumb because I mainly was noticing it in games like Picross and Tetris 99, games where it's like, they're not super graphically intensive or anything like that, but it's like, you do notice it's fuzzy. You see the jagged edges of because those games are all very angular with boxes and squares and whatnot. So it's like, you really see when, you're playing on a much better screen than you have the ability for, right? And so just those games alone, I'm seeing a huge improvement on. And I know those are silly games to get the most out of with this, but those are the kinds of games that I play, and I am seeing the improvement.
Yeah, and I think that's why I probably haven't really noticed, because to be honest, pretty much if I'm on my Switch 2, I've been playing either a Switch 2 version of a game or like an actual Switch 2 game.
Right.
So this might be a good opportunity to go back and play, like you said, some of these Switch 1 games that I have been meaning to do, because one of them specifically is that Donkey Kong Country.
Right.
But I guess that has a Switch 2 version.
I know, for a lot of people, this isn't like a huge deal because they're like docked only people. A lot of people just play their Switch docked, right? And so, they're not getting any kind of upgrade here. They're not getting 4K upgrades on any of these. And, I wouldn't expect that they would, right? That's what these Switch 2 editions are for, right? I think those are for the kind of docked experience upgrade, and you get the handheld experience as well. But I think this is really, really good. And it kind of takes the pressure off of Nintendo to get out these Switch 2 editions, and if not full Switch 2 editions, just like these quiet upgrades they've been doing, like we saw with New Super Mario Brothers U. What is it? Mario 3D World had a Switch 2 upgrade that came out for free. There's a bunch of them that have come out over time. Splatoon 3 got one, but it's like, I was like, man, are they just going to be doing this the whole time? This is taking so long to get some of these games looking better on this system. Because I feel like I mainly play my Switch in handheld, right? So it's like, for me, this is great. And I think it really does take a lot of the pressure off of Nintendo to really focus on that going forward. There is definitely just something to note about it. You do have to enable this in the settings. Right now, it's at the very, very bottom of system settings. So you have to scroll all the way down, and then it's in this very strange area. I'm sure they'll change where that is eventually. They did do some other updates with the kind of quick access menu. So hopefully they slot it in there at some point. But it does drain your battery a lot more because you're essentially overclocking the virtual Switch, I suppose you could say, on the Switch 2, right? So it is going to drain more battery. I think in tests of Doom 2016, it went from 5.5 hours to 3.5 hours of battery life, something like that, running in the docked mode in portable. But I think that's a fine trade-off, and I'll take it. Yeah, I'm really happy to see this.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird that they didn't just enable it by default, but I guess if it is that much of a battery impact, maybe we're looking at some more negative feedback on that end that
right.
I didn't want to deal with.
But
I mean, they still should have just had something when you put on your Switch that's like, would you like to enable this now? Go here.
Right.
And just hotly to it or something.
You definitely do have to go looking for it at the moment, or know that it is a thing. And I imagine once they iron out some of the kinks with it, like I'm sure this was like a quick fix right now, it seems like, just in the way that all the system settings are worded and everything like that. It feels like it was rushed a little bit. And kind of just talking about what you just said, like, why didn't they have this on launch? I think that does bring us here into the question of this topic, because I don't think they even thought about this before it came out. I think they thought that this was going to be a non-issue. Like, why would anyone care? You know what I mean? And so to me, this definitely feels like this is a reaction to feedback from the audience, right? And so, because I've seen a lot of people ask about this feature since it came out. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about more of this at large, right? Times that Nintendo have listened to their fans in the past, here in the present, and some stuff that we'd like to see them do in the future, since we now know that Nintendo is listening to fans, and more specifically to this podcast. But we do know, yes, that Nintendo has been putting out surveys recently. I don't know if you ever get surveys in your email from Nintendo about games that you've been playing, or asking about feature requests or stuff like that. But they've been putting out surveys to people, and I'll usually fill those out every time I get one, especially now that we're seeing kind of the fruits of that labor. I think that is definitely something good to do. We've heard from former employees at Nintendo that Nintendo is constantly monitoring content creators, listening to what people are saying, going on the forums and Reddit and stuff like that, and listening to complaints. So that's certainly something that we're seeing, especially recently. I think something else that has kind of shown itself was when Tanabe-san, who did an interview with Famitsu, just about all the things that people were upset about with Metroid Prime 4. He was like, yeah, he started the development back, with this other studio, and it's kind of outdated now. We definitely realize that, but we hope people will enjoy it nonetheless, and we'll try to do better next time. It's like, whoa, that's new, right? Like, when did we ever hear people do that before, right?
Yeah, that was pretty refreshing to hear, to be honest.
Yeah.
Out of that. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of coming at this initially from like the heel side, to be honest. Like, I don't know how much they actually had, but as I kind of read through the show notes, I was like, they actually have made some really good changes. And I know, differing opinions about Metroid Prime 4 aside, you are absolutely right that they have kind of gotten out and owned it at the very least. And kind of said like, hey, like, we can do better. We know what the issues were. Like, we can take this in the right direction.
And I was talking to somebody, and they said that that was likely Tanabe, who did that interview. I don't think it was credited. It was just the statements were from Nintendo. But I think Tanabe, as we know, is on his way out, right? Like, I think Metroid Prime 4 was to be the last game that he produced, right? So, I think it would make sense that he's like, well, I'm leaving. So I'm just going to bring it up. I'm going to follow the sword, and I'm going to, I have a lot less to worry about now that I'm like no longer going to be at the company. But it is refreshing nonetheless, right? And it's pretty unprecedented. It's something that you don't see very often from Nintendo. And they aren't angels, right? There's a lot of stuff that they've been very stubborn about. Let's talk about themes, right? Like, can you believe we went an entire generation where there's a whole area where you can change your themes on the Switch, and the only things were light and dark? Like,
I don't even know you could do that. To be honest, I haven't really engaged with that either.
Wait, is your Switch in light mode?
I think it still is in whatever.
Do you have a white background on the back?
I'm pretty sure.
Unless
it carried over.
That is psychotic.
Is that something I had to do specifically on the Switch too? Did I have to change that?
No, I mean, it would have carried over the setting from the Switch 1. So if you changed it to dark mode on there,
maybe I had already done it then.
I don't know. Some people, there are some light mode perverts out there that love getting blasted in the face with the white light at all times and hours of the day and night.
The UI customization could definitely use some work though, because I love that on PlayStation. I can go, there's a ton of different cool stuff. I have like some cool anniversary ones that I think I'm still using on mine. Just like makes it look a lot cooler. They could do some really simple Mario based stuff, I think.
Right.
But
But I mean, from Switch 1 to Switch 2, that we have seen a ton of stuff added. I think one of the main things people really wanted was voice chat, right? And they made a huge deal out of game chat whenever that came out, right? And I think that was just a very requested feature, and so they definitely do some things for people. And we're going to talk about a lot of those in the Switch 2 era here. But real quickly, I did want to go over some times that Nintendo has historically listened to fans. And some of these have to do with games. One of them, I feel like Twilight Princess was kind of a response to the backlash to the art style of Wind Waker, right? I feel like they probably weren't intending for Twilight Princess to be as dark and gritty of a graphic style as it originally was. Or maybe they were, and it just worked out where they could take credit for listening to fans on that one and moving it over. But people were really pissed off at Wind Waker, and whenever Twilight Princess came out, everybody was so pleased, which is funny because it feels like Wind Waker's probably aged a little bit better graphically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's definitely one of the main examples I could think of as far as them maybe kind of responding. And Twilight Princess worked out pretty great too.
Absolutely.
Then, like a lot of the franchises like that you've listed here that they're finally starting to come back a little bit. I know Paper Mario was the GameCube example there.
Thousand Year Door getting a remake. I feel there was a huge fan campaign to bring Thousand Year Door back. Especially now that they're doing GameCube classics and there's a whole NSO app for it. The fact that they went out of their way to put that game back out, did a whole revamp of the music and the graphics and everything. That definitely felt like a response to fans.
Even the whole NSO concept or the NSO emulation concept, I think is a pretty good response because they know that they have all these old games that people will buy their system for just to play some of these. I'm sure that there's a small subset of the population that probably spends 80% plus of their time just playing old stuff emulated on the Switch.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think one last one we'll say before the Furukawa era here was I feel like they sort of started open worlding everything after fans really, really had a good reaction to Breath of the Wild. I feel like lots of games we started seeing getting the Breath of the Wild treatment. And, even so much as Metroid Prime, which I think was a misstep, right? But which they've said, they're like, oops, we made it a little bit too much like Breath of the Wild without really understanding what made Breath of the Wild good. You know what I mean? And that was an industry-wide thing. That wasn't just Nintendo. I think, Sonic Frontiers, being a major example of a game that straight up had Breath of the Wild, but I think Legends Arceus would not exist if Breath of the Wild hadn't been
totally. I think that there's a ton of examples of that, and I think that they, like you said, it wasn't always the correct knee-jerk response to maybe implement some of these, but they have, at least they are kind of taking the feedback and trying to do something about it. Like I know, to me, it felt like Pikmin 4 was a lot easier than the older ones because I feel like Pikmin had a pretty infamous reputation for being a pretty difficult strategy game, at least for like a Nintendo console type thing.
Sure.
At least in some of the later stuff. And then Pikmin 4 comes out and, for better or worse, it's quite a bit streamlined. I guess is the word I would use for that. And not everybody liked that, right? Like I thought Pikmin 4 was pretty fun, but I think sometimes it's not always taken, in a great with great response there.
Right.
At least they are doing something. I'm sure we could think of other examples besides just those two that
Right. I mean, and there's way more, especially from games that we could talk about. But I do kind of just want to move into some, big features that we've seen added in recently, especially in the Furukawa era. And, we've talked a lot about these like Nintendo eras. I feel like every time that there's a change in leadership, we see a different attitude at the company. The pre-Iwata years, like back in the Yamauchi time, that was obviously that was the catapulting of Nintendo into the stratosphere with the NES and the Super Nintendo, N64, and then into the GameCube. That's kind of when they started to finally dip a little bit, right? I mean, maybe with the N64 or whatever, but that was that era, of Nintendo. Then there's the Iwata era, which was Nintendo really, being out there with, I think, a lot of their innovation, right? And they're doing the DS. That's when the DS came out, and the Wii and everything, and even the Switch. Like the Switch itself is a pretty radical idea for them. Combining those two handheld and console pillars. That was unheard of. Nobody had ever really done that before, right? And I think I think you could pretty much say, even though Furukawa, took over early on in the Switch life cycle, that it's like that Iwata vibe was very much carrying over. And now that we're in Switch 2, I feel like this is the first console that is like, this is the Furukawa era of Nintendo straight up, right? Yeah. And I think, first off, just kind of calling it a Switch 2, playing it easy, just doing the Switch again, that would have never happened before. I think that is like already showing a marked difference, and very much like that's what everybody wanted, man, was just like, just make the Switch better, and that's like, I really feel like Nintendo was listening there. They didn't pull a Wii U and try to do something totally different. People were like begging for the eShops to carry over and for consistency, for backwards compatibility and all this kind of stuff. And they really delivered with all that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, like you were saying, even at the end or the beginning of the Switch one had stuff like Labo and all that. But right. I don't think we've kind of seen something
that's very Iwata coded. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. and bless Iwata, probably my favorite era of all those of Nintendo personally, just because of how much attachment I have to a lot of that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you gotta. They did miss a lot of technical advancements that I know we're talking about a lot of these now, and they all are really good. But a lot of these I do think should have been added a long time ago for it, like totally. Voice chat and stuff. But I mean, they've kind of been playing catch up. So like you're saying, right? Like they really needed to kind of come in to the Switch 2 era, locked in, ready to make these changes, ready to kind of catch up with the Discords of the world, with the PlayStation Network type features that we've had and been able to actually use. And so I do think that is kind of a direct response to, people complaining like, I'm using Discord with my friends every day. Why can't Nintendo have something where I can just get in the freaking Mario Kart world online lobby without having to jump through 6 hoops to play with my friends on it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can now add people to the game chats, but please let me message people. I want to fucking message someone. You've got an app. Yeah. Let me message people through the app, if not through my system. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, please. There's still a lot more improvements they can do there. As you said, they are very slow to do a lot of these things, but I do think there are some changes happening. Obviously, the first one that we can talk about here is the one that just happened, and that's boost mode. We've already talked about that now, so that's definitely a huge upgrade that I'm really glad to see. Obviously, the game chat fixes that we talked about earlier and the GameCube emulation fixes, I think those are both part of this list that we can talk about. Just updates to the emulators on Nintendo Classics in general, I think has been huge, and bringing stuff like Virtual Boy that they never would have done before, but people have been begging for, and maybe even to their detriment, they brought Virtual Boy in, because it's like, how many people are really actually going to play these things? It's really just a few very loud hardcores that are probably the ones really begging for this, but it is really great to see. And I think, them, bringing in stuff like remappable controls and lots of those other features into the Nintendo Classics has been pretty huge.
Yeah, totally. It's been really cool to see them actually make those improvements. I've always liked the cool stuff that you could do, like the game, being able to play with people online, and kind of like whatever Steam share play type tech they have going there. So seeing them continue to iterate on that is definitely really cool because they know what people are using there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as we said, I really assumed that Nintendo would be just doing GameCube games on a game-by-game basis, for this whole time. I really did not think that we'd be getting a whole Nintendo Switch Online app for GameCube. I thought just the fact that like the games are way bigger would be a barrier to entry for them doing it. And I actually, we have something about that later that we'll talk about in stuff that we'd still like to see. But I think, that was, everyone was begging for GameCube Online, and people are begging for Wii right now as well, which really makes me think that we'll be seeing Wii and DS. I think there's no shot now that we have GameCube and they've proven like, oh no, we are going to be doing all the consoles. Like I really do think that, they will be getting their, making their way through all of these systems eventually. Right. One thing that I think is huge, and this isn't all just on Nintendo, but something that I was really, really happy to see with this most recent Pokemon Presents is that Wind and Waves is not coming out this holiday.
Yeah.
This is the first time.
Surprising.
Yes, very much so. This is like the first time that they've given more than, this is the first time they've deviated from the release schedule of Pokemon.
It's already been even longer, the longest it's ever been. So it's getting like another year on top of, I think, the longest cycle that they've had between generations.
Yeah.
So,
and this, you have to think that this is a direct response to people if IGN giving Pokemon Scarlet and Violet the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon that they put out, them giving that a 6 out of 10 had to be a huge smear on Nintendo's reputation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so, because it was pretty unacceptable as far as the performance of that game was. I actually like that game a lot, but I mean, you just can't get around the fact that it kind of came out and was borderline unplayable at times with the 10 FPS looking stuff. So.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of it was not retro, but Pokemon Company versus Nintendo on this one.
I might be wrong on this, obviously, but I 100% think that Nintendo was like, "Hey guys, you gotta take more time on these," because it's like they put out that the Switch 2 upgrade for Scarlet and Violet, and it made it a lot better.
Totally.
But still, I mean, that game is going to be in that state on Switch 1 forever, right? And so it's like, they really, and I think that there's a lot that game would have benefited from for just, with 6 extra months to cook or whatever, you know what I mean? And so the fact that, Pokemon Company, maybe got a little spanking from Nintendo and was like, all right, let's like readjust and figure out our, marketing and our merchandising stuff to, push it back a little bit. It's okay if we delay. Like, Pokemon's still going to be making hella money, whatever they do, right? So
Pokemon's not going anywhere.
Yes, yes. So I think that's a huge one. I'm really excited for Wind and Waves. I haven't really talked to you about Wind and Waves, but are you excited for that game?
Oh yeah, I mean, me, I'm if there's new Pokemon there, I'm going to be there day one, no matter what. So I've been Pokepiaing it up, but for sure, I'm just trying not to think about it too hard, just because I know how long away it still feels like it is, because it is not till next year.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I mean, the starters look really cool.
Yeah,
definitely be. I love the little Angry Bird looking one.
You like the little bird?
Another grass bird.
Yes, it does look like an Angry Bird. It looks exactly.
It literally looks like an Angry Bird. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that price hike thing that we alluded to earlier in the episode. So, Nintendo is the only company to not have raised the price on their,
I guess so,
modern console right now. Now, they did raise the price on the Switch 1. And they raised the price on all the accessories for the Switch 2. But the console itself has not gotten a price hike. And
they are suing the government.
And they're suing the government for the tariffs, which we're not going to see any of that money, by the way.
Yeah.
That's going to go entirely back to Nintendo after they pushed all the accessory price onto us.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I have to wonder if that lawsuit has anything to do with them maybe waiting to make the move, but who knows?
Right.
Like the actual price increase, because they can say, we don't want to do that or something. I don't know.
But do you think that the fact that they haven't raised the price, even in the face of the tariff thing from the past, year, and this AI bubble with all the data centers hoarding up all the RAM and everything like that, the price of RAM is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
They have still held strong on the $450 price point. Do you think, the massive outcry of fans talking about how expensive the Switch was have anything to do with that? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm kind of in between, because to me, it kind of feels like they're just kind of waiting to see what plays out with the tariffs before they actually do anything. I kind of feel like they think like people are going to show up and buy it no matter what, especially because they don't have any problem charging $70 for Mario Tennis, whatever the last one was, and games like that I think maybe you should have like a little reconsideration of how much those cost per value, right? But I mean, it ultimately it's still a win for consumers that they haven't done it either way. So I mean, they're taking the win on that, no matter what. That they are still one of the cheaper console entry points at this point. And,
that's really interesting that you brought up variable pricing, because I think that's something that I would like to see more, because I think whenever Doug Bowser came out, whenever the Switch 2 was revealed, he talked about, how, some games are 80 and some games will be 50 and some games will be 60 and some are blah, 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 blah.
It's really felt like they've all been 70 though.
Right. But I will say the new Yoshi game is going to be 60.
Oh, okay. So I would have guessed 70 based on the trend.
That is the first Switch 2 exclusive that isn't like a $10 game like Dragon Drive or Dragon Drive was 20, wasn't it?
I think it was 20.
Yeah. But either way, that's the first, big AAA game that's coming out that is 60 as opposed to 70. And I mean, I know it's not that much of a change, but I mean, I went from like, I'm not picking that game up to like, well, maybe. It's pretty big difference. It looks really pretty. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like 50 is the sweet spot that they should be shooting for with those types of games. I still think 60. I think 60 is too much. And I think, I'm happy to pay $70 for like the new AAA, like Zelda or whatever. But even like paying $70 for Breath or Donkey Kong Bonanza was like, it kind of feels like a 60 to me. I don't know. I love the game, but.
No, yeah, same. I really enjoy it, but I think it was a mistake to put it out at $70. And I think that, they didn't announce the price for, I mean, Nintendo hasn't officially come out and announced the price, but all the stores that are listing the game are listing it for 60 right now for the Switch 2 edition. Okay. And so, which it's only a Switch 2 game, but it's like, that didn't come out until after I think Nintendo saw sales of Mario Tennis.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe reacting a little bit.
I think that was some reaction, right? So that's
I mean, I legitimately think games like that, especially like Mario Tennis, would do better if they would just lower the price by $20, make way more people get it. $70 just seems like such a, I don't know, just makes me think like this is the hardcore Call of Duty level game. And it's just not that. It's a $50 jump it with your friends type experience. But maybe I'm just a little bit too steam pilled at this point where I'm pretty much never paying $70 anyway. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they got to be feeling some pressure from over there as well, especially with how rampant emulation is on consoles like the AYN Thor and the Steam Deck for Switch games. But a couple more that we'll go through here on this list of updates that we've seen that feel like a Nintendo listening to their fans. One of them is bringing back kind of niche franchises. With Donkey Kong Bonanza, that I was flabbergasted. I mean, and that was my favorite game from last year. I loved that game. I've been wanting a good 3D Donkey Kong game forever. So getting Donkey Kong Bonanza was huge. Kirby Air Riders is wild. That's like a very niche franchise to come back. And I'm sure some of that was Sakurai just being like, I really want to make Kirby Air Riders. But I think it's also been a long requested return from fans to have that game come back. Tomodachi Life coming back as well. There's been lots of people really begging for that. What do you think? Do you think that any of this has to do with kind of fan feedback?
I mean, I'd throw Metroid there too. I know Metroid, it's been cooking a lot longer than a lot of these games because they tried to get that back. But I think even that was a response to them being like, look, we know people want Metroid out the door. We're trying. Here's us announcing it. And they did. And I mean, even since Metroid Prime 4, they've had Dread and stuff too. So it definitely feels like
we'll be seeing another 2D Metroid, maybe hopefully even announced this year. That would be really great. But yeah,
hopefully they can do the same with stuff like Star Fox that has just been kind of dormant since the Wii U game, which I actually loved. But I mean, I would love to see more stuff come out like that. Even a Star Fox return to form, I think would just be really great.
Yes,
like a basic Star Fox.
Fucking shooter. Crazy that the Switch did not get a Star Fox game. The entire 8 years that the Switch was out, we didn't get a single Star Fox game. We haven't had one since Star Fox Zero. It's just like absurd, So I feel like it's definitely on its way back.
It's time.
When you look at this, like Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby Air Riders, Tomodachi, like. Of course they're and Rhythm Heaven coming out later this year as well. Another like niche fan favorite. Like I think Star Fox is definitely going to be coming back sooner rather than later. Last thing we'll say here is I think something that fans have been begging for is parity with launch dates for third-party games. And I think for a long time, I think the Switch one was marked with like we're getting tons of third-party support on the Switch. But it's all games from like the PS3 and the Xbox 360, or like we get ports like down the road after people have had time to cook with it or whatever. I think Nintendo's been a lot smarter at getting dev kits out well ahead of the Switch 2 launching for a lot of these big AAA companies in order to actually get these games released at the same time. We're seeing Resident Evil Requiem release day and date was huge. And I really did not anticipate that. And if these rumors about GTA are to be believed, then it really shows that Nintendo's really putting their, their money where their mouth is as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, definitely think that that's something that they needed. And I know, the Switch and Switch 2 being as successful as they are probably helping a lot to convince these companies like Capcom to actually invest and spend their time to get it out day date. Capcom specifically seems to know, like, we need to stop just doing one console type stuff. We need to get everything on Steam. We need to get everything on as much Switch type stuff that we can do immediately.
Capcom is really pulling their weight lately.
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying the newest issue of Nintendo Force that came out is all about Capcom on Switch 2. And I think they've been doing really, really amazing stuff. And I can't wait to see what more they're going to be bringing to the system.
Hopefully we get another Monster Hunter type thing, like a portable Monster Hunter experience. Because I love when they do the staggered versions and basically just makes more games. So
Monster Hunter Stories 3 just came out and apparently is very good. I know Marth in our Discord was talking about it and really, really enjoyed the game.
Those are like a little more RPG type, I think.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Jordan put a little note here in the notes as well, saying that Resident Evil Requiem was the fastest selling game in the franchise. And kind of wonders if that's because it was on all of these platforms simultaneously.
I think 1,000% that is that. With that, and in conjunction with the fact that they've just done so much for the Resident Evil brand over the past few years, it was just pretty much guaranteed to be a smash hit out the door, I think.
Totally.
That game is, and it deserves it all too. The game is really, really good.
I bet a lot of third-party publishers though are looking at that stat and being like, "Yo, we need to." It's probably worth pushing our release dates out a little bit to get Switch out there on day one. You know what I mean? So I really hope that that's the case. Let's move on because I think that's a pretty good list here. But let's talk just a little bit about things we'd still like to see. Now that we know that Nintendo's listening to this podcast, let's talk about some things that fans have continually asked about for Nintendo that I think it would behoove them to bite the bullet, take the L, and make some of these changes, right? We talked about variable pricing. I think something they need to bring back is the Nintendo Selects branding of games. Yeah. I think they've been doing this thing throughout the entirety of the Switch one where they were like, we are the premium brand and we are the Disney of video games, and not only are some games going into the vault where they will like delist shit for no reason, they also just barely ever did any sales. Like, I think that, you don't have to make them $20, as they were in the past. Inflation has happened over the years, right? So like, the Nintendo Selects brand now could be $30 or $40, right? And that's just the price that those games are physically going forward. They've got the little banner on them that says, this is a million seller or whatever. They can make up the 5 million sellers, because they sell a fuck ton of these goddamn games. So it's like, but doing a permanent price decrease like all the other consoles are doing, I think it's time, right?
Yeah.
Especially as they're trying to get more people in the system.
I just miss having that kind of like, I guess, value or whatever, like premium hits type branding for all the consoles too. I feel like that was just always really cool to see when you were walking in Walmart as a kid.
Yeah.
Be able to pick up whatever cool games off the shelf for $20 for.
And just like do the math. Like, I understand that they're a premium brand, but it's like, if you've got so many more people buying these games, like it's gonna work out for you. I promise, Nintendo. It's gonna work out. Yeah.
It's a reason why having like the multiplayer games, especially on like Steam, be either free or like Marathon, for example, is $40 to get in. That game honestly, has its own problems at $40. But like if that game came out at $70, it'd be dead in the water, right? Like, because they just need people playing it.
Which you're seeing with a lot of these game of service games that are coming out now.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Even when they're free, they're struggling to make the money. So there's got to be a sweet spot there. I do think that sweet spot is the value-based $30 to $40 pricing, especially for these multiplayer type experiences or like the analogous, Yoshi story type Nintendo type games.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And if Nintendo wants to throw their $10 premium on it, I'll pay $50 and be happy. I'm not gonna lie. So
something else I'd love to see, and I think I've been hearing a lot of people say online, is they want smaller games from smaller teams at Nintendo. Yeah. And I do think we are seeing a little bit of this. I worry that they were scared off by the public response to games like Welcome Tour and Dragon Drive, which a lot of people really hated. But I really hope that doesn't scare Nintendo off of making more experimental little experiences for for cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Put out, a fucking jump rope challenge again. You know what I mean? Put out more NSO freebies. Like put out these like little experience. Yeah, a Box Boy. That's a great example of a first party Nintendo game. That's like a little bitty experience, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to see more stuff like that.
I feel like the big three companies, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, have that problem currently, where none of them are able to kind of just get these mid-tier games out. Microsoft is kind of doing it with some of their Obsidian stuff at this point, but they all just have this problem where there's just not enough output, and the games that do come out, they may be huge, but the quality varies sometimes, and just used to be nicer to have like a lot of smaller stuff to play.
Yeah,
I feel like you only really get that experience on Steam with a lot of the newer smaller indie type games that blow up now.
100%. Yeah. They got to be better at crediting developers. They just got to be better at that. Lots of people have been left out of credits, especially, you look at the Donkey Kong Country Returns Switch port. The whole retro team that worked on the game are not in the credits of that. Like the original creators of that game. They just got to get better at that. And every time a game like that comes out, and they don't credit, it becomes a huge controversy, right? Like, or somebody was a contractor and then left before the game came out and they end up not crediting them at the end of the game. Like, people make a huge stink about it every time it happens, so I really think that they need to be better at that. I think they also need to be better at crediting the musicians in the Nintendo Music app as well, right? And not just having everything made by homogenous Nintendo. I think people are sick of that, right? And it really makes it feel like they're in the past. So that's something I'd love to see them implement as well, with all this fan feedback and pushback that they've been getting.
Yep, for sure.
Another one this one's really personal for me that I would love to see, and that is, as we're getting more of these Nintendo Switch 2 editions, like say for instance, Smash Brothers at some point is going to get a Switch 2 edition.
They've got to have something.
Exactly. I doubt they're putting out a new Smash in the next year or two. I really can't see that happening.
They don't need to.
But I think that they will be putting out a Switch 2 edition. When they do that, they got to add rollback netcode.
If they don't, then what are they possibly doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to make your netcode better. Because it's like, if that game had rollback netcode, I would be like a Smash god by this point. It would be like the only game I play. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like, as it stands, like the latency, the input delay, everything with Smash Online makes it unplayable for me. And I know a lot of people aren't that way. I know a lot of people are able to adjust to it, but I have never been able to. And I know that that's true for a lot of people as well. And so, and in addition to that, Mario Maker 2, I feel like they'll probably put out a Mario Maker 3 before they do a Mario Maker 2 Switch 2 edition. But I loved the online for that game. Like the online for that game is tremendously fun, right? But it was just unplayable. It's like half of the time I'm playing at, half speed, right? Because I'm playing with some random kid in Argentina that doesn't have, can't fucking connect to anything other than dial up, right? And so it's like, you gotta as you're updating these games, we gotta put rollback netcode in. And I think whatever they're doing with their netcode right now is working, because Kirby Air Riders, I've never had a bad experience with that game online. At least when I'm in the lobby, it's a little choppy as people are coming in and out, but whenever I'm in a match, it's been perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so something in Dragon Drive, that's another great example. I never had any slowdown on Dragon Drive. So they're doing something right now, but if you're going to be doing these updates, please update some of your old games and add in rollback netcode, because you've got really great stuff there. I just want to be able to play it.
Yeah, hopefully they can standardize that or something going forward, and just tell everybody, look, if you're doing multiplayer, here's the package you need. Here's the rollback. Has to have this. Because I would play the shit out of some Smash if they would just get the damn update out the door with that.
We've got one here from Jordan, which is Jordan's sick of Nintendo burying 4K upgrades inside of expensive paid DLC. I think Jordan really wants to play Mario Wonder in 4K, but doesn't want to buy $20 of multiplayer fluff in order to do it, right? So I can't see this one happening, if I'm honest, I really feel like, they have a strategy here, but it would be nice to maybe have, even if it's like a $5 or $10 upgrade for just 4K, that's fine. But then if you want the actual content, then you can pay $20, right? Having variable pricing in your upgrades is also not a terrible idea. I don't know if you feel the same way about this.
I think it might convolute things a little bit on kind of an already convoluted, like you have two versions. Here's the Switch 2 version and the Switch 1 version. Oh, but are you going to get the Switch 2 one with all the upgrades or just something? I think it might add like another layer of complexity that I already struggle with myself sometimes a little bit.
I tend to agree.
To go through the hoops of just getting the right game that I want.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, I think the upgrade should be $10 or less, even with the stuff that they've been adding, because I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, is kind of the value proposition for these upgrades that they've been getting, even 4K or not. Like some of them have just been pretty subpar.
Yeah. I think that if you're going to be just upgrading it to 4K and upping the frame rate, I think that should be free. I think that the recent Xenoblade Chronicles X update like looks worse.
It's really bad, right?
It looks worse when you have the Switch 2 edition than if you just play it in 1080 in handheld with boost mode. You know what I mean? Like it looks better with boost mode when you're just playing the docked version, right? So it's like the fact that was $5, that's a pretty easy pill to swallow. But it's like Animal Crossing for $5 got you the 4K update and a bunch of content. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that there needs to be at the very least, more consistency. Like you said, it's confusing right now what you get and what you don't with a paid upgrade. Something that we had here is a better screen on the next iteration. We talked about this a little bit with the hardware revision. I think, an OLED would obviously be great. I think that will be happening. But the OLED notwithstanding, they got to fix this ghosting issue because, I play a lot of side scrollers on the Switch 2. And I really notice it. I didn't like at first, but then the more like 2D games I played, the more I was like, oh man, this just doesn't look as clear as it did on my OLED. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that, anything they can do on the software side to fix that would be huge, and I think that there are little things that they could do for their renderer, in the pipeline in order to fix or at least mitigate some of the ghosting that you get from the screen right now. And, getting this boost mode really emboldens me that might be something that they actually do, because that's one of the major complaints that I hear online, especially since Digital Foundry did a big expose on it and showed off all the ghosting that is there. That would be really great if it's not going to be a hardware revision to put something out software-wise. We talked about this a little bit, but I do think that the next Metroid game is going to be going back to basics as far as the Metroid Prime series is concerned. I would be very surprised if, first of all, I think that, the reaction to this game notwithstanding, I do think that they are going to still be making Metroid Prime games.
Yeah, I just hope that they don't put it in the vault at this point. That's kind of where I'm at.
Like the series?
Yeah, the series.
I don't think they will. I think Nintendo knows that Retro deserves to start a game from square one. You know what I mean? Because I think basically whenever Tanabe-san came out and did that article, I think he was basically being like, yo, this is not Retro's fault. It was like kind of taking the blame. You know what I mean? So I think that'll probably happen. Different sized carts to make sure physical game releases are feasible for smaller games. This is something that we've actually kind of heard might be happening. We haven't gotten official word from Nintendo on this, that they're going to be variable cart sizes, but people really hate game key carts, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the major complaints. Do you think Nintendo is going to be doing anything to mitigate some of those annoyances?
I would like to see that. I know I've seen a lot of discussion on the developer side too, kind of talking about the feasibility of having to pay for a whatever 64 gig cart every single time, especially with some of these smaller games. So I think it makes total sense for them to do that. I don't know if the probably not directly related, but the RAM situation might be causing memory issues as a whole. I haven't looked at how far down the line that goes down to the SD card type stuff too.
I think this one is just kind of like, let's say that they have been manufacturing what would it be? Because right now they're all 64 gig. So maybe they've been making 32 and 16 gig game cards, right? For some of these smaller games. I wouldn't really expect them to make 128 gig cards. I that would be nice, but I kind of just don't think that's going to happen.
I
think people will put a game on 2 cards before they, which would be crazy.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be insane.
But let's say they have been manufacturing those, as has been rumored. First of all, they would have to physically produce those, which would take time. And they would have to have started that after the launch of the Switch 2, which would have been in the last half of 2025. And then these studios would have to finish their games and then print them on these cards. So it's going to be a while, even if it is true, before we really start to see those. But I really hope sometime in 2026 we start to see, smaller game cards coming out for some of these indie games. And then I think the last one on here, and this is a really big one, man. And I think this one has been annoying people for 8 years now with the Switch 1. And that is, let's get less fucking slop on the eShop. It is impossible to peruse that thing without being assaulted with hentai games, AI slop, just asset swaps from Unreal Engine or whatever. You just see all this garbanzo on the eShop right now, and there's a lot of scam artists taking advantage of publisher access that they have to Nintendo's eShop. And I think that it is way past time that Nintendo has to crack down on this, and it's going to be painful because it's going to mean going in and literally removing a bunch of games. You know what I mean? And where is the line drawn on that? It's not going to be a clean process. It's going to be messy, but I think Nintendo has to rip the Band-Aid off here and fix the eShop, because they made a lot of upgrades to the system itself. It's, less laggy to go on the eShop now, but that doesn't fix the slop problem, right? Do you think that Nintendo will eventually do this?
To be honest, no. But I don't think it's a Nintendo problem. I think Sony and Steam have a similar issue. I think Steam probably has handled it the best, and I think personally that I don't necessarily think less slop is the answer, but give me a way to sort through the slop, or at least
some kind of filter, maybe
hide. Yeah, a really good filtering system, hide the slop type thing. Steam is able to pretty much, if you want, I think, turn most of that off.
You could definitely turn off adult content.
Yeah, you definitely can. And I think that would be huge in and of itself. It's hard. Then you have to get the games to tag themselves as adult or whatever. But I think it's just step one. Steam, I don't know if Steam does that automatically or what, but it feels like Steam has whatever tech they're using to do it is the less obtrusive one that I've had to deal with. But for sure, like you said, I mean, the eShop is leagues better than it was on. So it was just absolutely miserable on Switch 1. Trying to go in and buy something. At least now I can kind of browse for fun when I'm not doing something else, or just sitting there waiting, just kind of see what's up without having to feel like I'm waiting 10 minutes for the freaking page to load.
But it's but I don't even though it is better, I still don't go, because it's just there's I have to just scroll. Yeah, it's not taking forever to load. It's just taking forever to scroll through all the bullshit. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's good stuff. Back in the early days of the Switch, before people figured out how they could game the system, there's a lot of amazing games that I found out just by browsing the eShop. And I think that those developers are getting fucked by this. Yeah,
they're just getting buried.
Yeah. And there's got to be some way that they can use some kind of, because there are AI generated image detectors, you know what I mean, out there. I know it's not a perfect science and all that, but it's I can tell with my eyes when a game is using Gen AI for its key art. You could just tell. You could just tell. And whenever that happens, the game is a no effort, assets flip, right? So I don't know. I just think that this has to happen. It has to happen so that we can go back to quality on this system. But I don't know the exact solution.
Hopefully they figure something out.
Anyway, well, had to have a little bit of a fuck AI moment in this episode. I feel like every episode is one of those we sleep at. I think that's mainly going to wrap up our main topic here. Is there anything else that you could think of for ways that you think Nintendo has either been listening to fans or should continue to listen to their fans?
I think we pretty much covered it. My number one out of all that is just keep bringing back the vaulted franchises that we haven't seen in forever. Just keep listening to the fans on that regard. I know there probably are a lot of examples of some of them trying to bring back some of these franchises that, we just don't see or know. And that's behind the scenes. It just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
There's that stupid Star Fox kart racer rumored for a while that never came out or maybe never existed at all or whatever. But it's like, who knows if they've been trying to do this for a lot of their franchises and it just kind of hasn't really turned the page. But
yeah, maybe Bandai Namco was making a Star Fox game and they had to restart development on that. We just didn't get a ping, showing us the title like we got with Metroid Prime 4. You know what I mean? Who knows what's gotten the boot that they haven't announced, right? So, will be very interesting to see. But what do you think, listener? Do you have any ways that you think Nintendo has been listening to their fans? Are there any things that you need Nintendo to implement, hardware, feature-wise, game-wise? Please let us know in the comments. Like we said before, down in the comments section of the YouTube version is a great place to leave some of your thoughts there, or get in touch with us on any of these other platforms as well. We'll have more at the very end of the show about all the ways you can get in contact with us. But I think with that out of the way, we are going to move on to our final section of the show, and that is the games we've been playing recently. I don't have a lot to report. I've actually really not been playing a lot of games this past week. Like in general, like I said, there's been a lot going on. I had to write a whole goddamn speech for this wedding, and I've been reading a lot, like I said. But I have gotten a little bit of time to play more Slay the Spire 2, which I've really been enjoying. I've been playing some in single player, and I also did play a 4-player co-op run recently, which was a ton of fun. It was also the first time I've completed Slay the Spire in either of the games. I beat the final boss because I had 3 super overpowered veterans playing with me. One of the guys who was on our team was on like a 5 streak currently. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I think I'm going to play with you guys all the time and just let you carry me the entire time. But Slay the Spire 2 is very, very fun. It's getting constant updates, and it's really great to see. I really enjoy this game quite a bit, and I can't wait to play more.
And it's like doing super good. I think I've checked a couple times on the player counts. There's more than 500,000 people on sometimes at like Sunday morning.
Yeah, in early access. It's like, and I think it's smart because it's like a lot of roguelikes just get constant updates after release. But I think it's smart that they called this early access because it really kind of absolves them from. They can make any major changes to balance that they want.
Sure.
And if, I know it got like review bombed for some like change that they're making at some point. Yeah, it's people are stupid. But it's like, but I think the fact that it's early access does, I think, absolve them in some aspects of what that could be. But
I love their little key art that they have on the like the epochs or whatever, that are like just
it's like MS Paint drawings. Yeah, exactly.
Really charming.
I think there's some of those are still left over in the base game. So, but anyway, Jeremy, what have you been playing?
But like you said, kind of been a pretty busy week. So I did get a bit of time Thursday and Friday to game, but pretty much the usuals, with the exception of one. But I'll quick shouts out to Deadlock, which has just been, I think, the best multiplayer game to come out in the past 10 years since Overwatch, basically. So that just continues to be so good. And then, I've been playing a bunch of Slay the Spire also. Pretty much had the same experience as you, where I was carried to victory for the first time ever in either Slay the Spire 1 or 2.
Well, in multiplayer?
I was playing with 2 other buddies, and my friend cleared with maybe less than 10 health left. I couldn't believe that we actually beat the run. So that was really cool to see. But the big one that I will spend just a couple minutes talking about here is Bungie's new game Marathon. I am a longtime Bungie head, I would say, since pretty much the Halo 1, Halo 2 days. Even played the old Marathon games on the 360 arcade when they did that re-release. And I have just sank so many hours into Destiny and Destiny 2 over the years that it was definitely pretty high on my radar, this Marathon game coming out. And I know there's a lot of discussion around it, but just coming out of the game's been out for a few weeks now, but they had this weird thing where they kind of told people look, don't even review it until we have our in-game stuff come out. And that doesn't happen until the end of the month. So they were trying to get people not even to review it until this came out. But
you can't really expect that.
It's an insane ask for sure. But they finally had their in-game content drop this past weekend. And it became pretty clear because I was they always have a pretty big air of mystery around them, especially with a lot of their new in-game type stuff in the Destiny area of Bungie, I would say. Even in the Halo era, they've always really been mysterious and esoteric about a lot of stuff. But the in-game content here finally launched, and it became pretty clear that what they were trying to do was essentially what they do for the Destiny raid situations, which is a really, really, really high skill required lot of patience required event where between either three, in this case for Marathon, it does trios, so it's you and two other guys in the game. They do not have matchmaking for these events, so you are fully expected to have at least two other people that you can group up with, either through like a external looking for game type thing or whatever. But this has always been a point of contention with Destiny also, because they do this with the raids there too, and people obviously want to be able to experience the content, but because you can't just matchmake and find it, it just becomes another hoop that you kind of have to jump through to do it. And there are a lot of different arguments, but it kind of all goes back to the fact that this is all just requires another level of patience and, to be honest, just like some sort of like FPS skill involved in it too.
Right.
Because the challenge that they're expecting you to do, it's not just like run in and shoot some stuff or like run in and kill some aliens. They are adding a whole level of puzzle complexity on top of this.
Interesting.
And the big thing with Marathon, which just kind of completely changed, I don't want to say changed my opinion on it, but really just kind of made me think like, damn, they really like took a step back and kind of reinvented a whole genre again here, is the level of PvP on top of all this that you have. Because you have the Destiny raids and the dungeons that you do, and those are all essentially PvE experiences. It's you and like I said, like either 3 or 6 people group up and you go have to fight really challenging encounters and kill really challenging bosses that require learning and doing puzzles to do. But it's all essentially fighting the boss. At the end of the day, you're fighting the boss. For this in Marathon, the expectation is that, one, you have to go through and do everything you need to do to fight and kill the boss. But while you're doing this in this new map, that it's called Cryo Archives in Marathon that they launched. And it's, like I said, it's the in-game raid map. On top of all the stuff that you have to do just to even like get and find the boss, you're going in with 5 other teams of 3 people on this map that are all essentially trying to kill you and get your loot and not necessarily prevent you from doing it, but they're either trying to do the same thing or just kill you and get the loot. No, very, very little friendly interactions in this game like there are in something like Arc Raiders, which has kind of taken off recently too. So it just like, it was one of the craziest, most dialed in gaming experiences that I've had recently, jumping in this on it either launched Thursday or Friday. Just been so long, I can't remember at this point. But it launched and just jumped in with 2 friends. And in my opinion, this is always the absolute best time to jump into a multiplayer type
at the very beginning.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Everybody's that's kind of the same level playing field.
Everybody's exploring. Everybody's got a level player field that you don't know the map as well. People don't immediately know how to do all the puzzles. So a lot of people on the map are doing the same thing as you and actually trying to solve the puzzle. You don't know where people are coming from. But it just made for like such an awesome exploring around this. Like, in my opinion, it is an incredibly well-made map with like verticality in it, tons of little like spots to get into. We were constantly just like finding ourselves in these like hidden loot rooms that like we didn't even take the main door into. We just like crouch through some vent or whatever and would pop up in there. But there's just so much to learn and so much required to even do anything in this map. And to even fight the boss for this map, just to kind of give one brief little explanation of what you have to do. You can load in and just go loot around the map. They for this specific map, on top of having to have no matchmaking, they're expecting people to have at least 5,000 credit inventory loadout too. So they're just like really trying to drill home the idea that if you're coming into this, you need guns that can kill things. You need a good shield. You need all this. And when you go in and you essentially, there's like these 7 vault things within the map, and each one of these vaults is a puzzle that you have to have. And this is kind of the biggest part that I have contention with, and I think that they have heard loud and clear that a lot of the community has some contention with this, is that to get into one of these 7 vaults, you have to have a gold like level key that dropped from another map. Like, you had to have already been playing the game already. In my time playing this game over the past few weeks, I have not seen a single one of these freaking keys. So I had to just accept really quickly that there was nothing I was going to be able to actually complete in the map. I was just going into to explore. But then you kind of start watching some of the streamers and just take a step back and look at the raid race. These teams are going in there. They're having to bring their super hard to find keys. They're having to clear the vault. And then from that point, the vault may or may not drop one of the 7 items you need to actually even fight the boss. So there were just it was like levels of RNG, like just randomly drop stuff on top of RNG, because you have to have the key to get in the vault.
Right.
And you have to hope that if you clear the vault that it drops the item you need. You had to do that 7 times and then load back in with all 7 of these items to open the boss door.
And so this is good. You like this.
Here's what I really like about it is that they had the balls to kind of come out and put something like this out,
right?
Like kind of unapologetically.
Sure.
And there is definitely room to refine, and I totally think that they will lower the barrier to entry or something a little bit here, and that's good, because it kind of goes back into the whole main topic of discussion today, is that they're really trying to like listen to feedback on this one, and they do it in Destiny, but it's just like sometimes feel molasses pace slow. With Destiny. In Marathon, they've already made a couple of really good changes, and they are continuously trying to be like, look, we have our game director's here, he's talking to y'all,
right?
And we hear the feedback that y'all want. Please, this is the first weekend that we have this out. Please just let us do it and then tell us what we need to do from there.
Yeah.
So I think it was definitely that type of thing that happened. But just like I literally, when I was about to go to bed on Friday night, I was still watching some of this, and I was like, there's no way they're going to beat this right now. And I watched a team like lock in and actually kill the boss for the first time. And because the whole thing boils down to a contest in Bungie's eyes, and the team who wins the contest gets like a champion belt or whatever. But it finally happened. And it was just like such a, cannot believe that these guys like are this high level doing this. Like, because these teams that were doing it, they were loading into the lobby and frying all 5 other teams immediately. It's just, like I said, the extra ask of having to do all this PvP engagement on top of everything else was just like, I can't believe that they even, because ultimately at the end of the day, what it means is that it's going to be 5% of people who play the game who can even engage with the content. And that's a whole discussion that could be had for sure. Because it was the same thing that people would kind of argue with about Destiny and its in-game content too, which requires all the matchmaking, all that stuff, or all the lack of matchmaking and putting your own team together. Easily the lowest player engagement with those pieces of content. But the thing is,
right. Yeah, I mean, I'm just interested in how it's going to like review now, or like what publications are going to think of stuff like that, right?
Yeah, totally. And I at this point, I have to think that a lot of those publications aren't even going to be able to do it to actually do the review stuff that they want. So
right. Well, I do know. I mean, I think the game. I don't think the game is for me, but I love the aesthetic of the game, and I think that like I do know a lot of friends of mine that are just as into it as you are right now. Like I was hanging out with my friend Xander the other day. We went and saw The Bride, which is a horrible movie. But like the whole time we were like on the way over there, he was just like, yeah, I'm playing Marathon with like all my boys. So like we get together every night. And it was just like, I think people are really excited. And I think it's cool that they're making games that are like very challenging in this way. Cause I feel like Destiny was a very accessible game for a lot of people. And it's kind of like cool that they are going this direction with it. And I'm really glad to hear that you're enjoying it so much. It really sounds like you're very passionate about it.
I definitely am. And yeah, I mean, like Destiny definitely has its like the raid type stuff where only 5% of people are going to be able to do this, because you have to have these specific guns to even be able to kill the boss and the DPS, the limited amount of time. But I think that even Marathon too, there's a lot to be said about how hardcore you have to be to do this specific part. But Marathon has maps that are less challenging, that you can jump in with your friends and have more of a laid back experience.
That's good to know.
I definitely put it above in challenge and sweat level. It's above Arc Raiders, but it's not to the point where, like, if you're familiar with the PvP type and you like the Halo type setting of like arena combat and are willing to maybe put a little bit of learning into the extraction shooter genre, it's hard not to recommend at this point. And I'm really curious to see where it is, even in just a month from now, where they are. And, hopefully in a year from now that it's thriving or still, around. Because I definitely think that we need some more change up in the multiplayer competitive shooter space.
Well, who knows? Maybe I'll become a hardcore sweaty for Marathon. Well, I thank you for that. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for giving my platform.
Yes, of course. We talked about this. We talked about this yesterday at the movie. You were like, "I will come on your podcast, but I want to have a platform to talk about Marathon." And I was like, "You got it, buddy. You talk as long as you want." I'm glad that you were able to do that, and I'm excited to see where this game goes in the future. It's like it doesn't seem like this is going to be one of those games that have been coming out recently and like failing immediately. Like it feels like this one has some staying power. So yeah, knock on wood. Yeah, I hope to not have to report on a bunch of studio closures next week at Bungie, which we have reported on in the past. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of the show. It was such a wonderful delight, as always, to have you on, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining
this week.
Thanks
for having me. Love the Switch Headz.
Of course. Always great to have you on. Thank you very much to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. Thanks to all of our wonderful patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Jeremy? Where can people find you online?
I'm Poop Stump, and you can find me on Discord.
There you go. Yeah, great Discord hang over there in the Poop Stump land. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheadz.com, and we have a Patreon, as I said, a Facebook group, and a Discord. We would love it if you would join us over there on the Discord. We have such a wonderful community of like-minded gamers, a non-toxic community where you can talk about everything that you hear about on the show, talk about all the latest news, get together with friends to play online. It's just a wonderful area, and we would love to have you be a part of it. If you've been listening to the show for a while and you want to join up, now's the time. Like we said before, if you could, please leave a review over on Apple or Spotify. Please go over to YouTube, watch the YouTube version of the show, give us a like and subscribe and a share if you could as well. That really goes a really long way with the algorithm. Share the show with a friend via word of mouth. All that stuff really works so much for us. We would really appreciate your patronage going forward. And we just appreciate anyone who gets to this point in the podcast and has continued listening. We love all of you so much, and I can't wait to do another banger of an episode next week. We've got a really fun one planned, and I can't wait to blow the lid off of next week's episode. But until then, gang, you guys know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Maybe keep making a big fucking stink, because it sounds like Nintendo is actually listening when we complain loudly on the internet these days. But
do the surveys. Yeah. Do the damn surveys.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck ICE. Free Palestine. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.